Well now, friends, settle in and let the quiet of the evening embrace you. Tonight, we travel back to a time of myth and monument, a time of golden sands and god-kings, and we will ask a very simple question about a very famous mystery. How, truly, were the great pyramids of Giza built? We imagine great cosmic forces, or the brutal, cracking whips of countless slaves. But the truth, as it so often is far more human and far more surprising. What if I told you that the fuel for this great engine of civilization, the secret ingredient that gave thousands of men the strength to build a stairway to the stars, was not fear, but beer? As we begin this journey, a simple like ore. A subscription is always a quiet, wonderful way to support our channel, and I always love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments where you are in the world and what time it is for you now. It's a lovely reminder of the community we are building here. Alright then, let your body grow heavy and your mind begin to drift. Let's travel back nearly 5,000 years to the Giza Plateau at dawn. The air is still cool, carrying the chill of the desert night. But the eastern horizon is glowing a soft, promising shade of rose and gold, and against that growing light stands a great, jagged silhouette, the half-finished pyramid of the pharaoh Khufu. Its shadow stretches for miles across the sand, a vast, dark mountain made by human hands. Slowly, the world awakens, not with a single sound, but with a low, growing hum. It is the sound of thousands, of men stirring from their simple homes in the workers' village, the sound of ropes being coiled, of tools being gathered, the sound of 10,000 quiet conversations, of morning prayers whispered to the gods for strength and safety. This is the greatest construction site on earth, a city of stone and sand, of sweat and faith, every day for 20 years. This city has woken to the same task, to raise a mountain for their king, their God on earth, and for every man who toils here, from the stonecutter to the quarryman, to the one who hauls the heavy sledges. The day ahead is long and hot and punishing, but they know that sustenance is coming. Not just bread, but the liquid bread of the gods, their strength, their payment, their beer. Among those tens of thousands of men, let our story find just one. His name is Ka. He is not a slave. He is a skilled laborer, a man of Egypt, here to build a tomb for his king, his living God. He is in the prime of his life, his body strong and compact, a machine of muscle and bone built for this very purpose. His skin is the color of the rich Nile earth, baked dark by a lifetime under the sun. He wears only a simple white linen kilt, and his feet are bare against the sand and stone. His hands tell the story of his life. They are wide and calloused, scarred from 1,000 stray stone chips and rope burns. And right now, those hands are pressed flat against the rough, warm surface of a block of limestone, a block the size of a small ox cart. Ka is part of a hauling gang, and his morning's work, his work every morning, is to move these colossal stones from the barges on the canal up the great causeway to the ever-growing pyramid. He leans into it, his back and legs screaming with the effort. The muscles in his shoulders are coiled tight like ropes. He can feel the grain of the stone, rough against his palms. He can smell the fine, white dust that fills the air with every push. But if you were to look into his eyes, you would not see a great religious fervor. Not yet. You would see a simple, bone-deep weariness, a weariness that has accumulated over thousands of identical mornings. His thoughts are not on eternity or the gods. His thoughts are on the scorching sun already beginning to climb. on the ache in his lower back, and on the deep, gnawing thirst that is already starting to build in his throat. He thinks only of the next push, and of the sound of the foreman's horn, the signal that will grant him a few precious moments of rest, and the first cool, nourishing taste of his morning beer. Ka is not alone in his struggle. He is one man in a team of dozens, and his team is one of hundreds. He is a single drop of water in a great river of human effort. The block of stone he pushes rests on a great wooden sledge. In front of the sledge, a line of young men run back and forth with clay jars, pouring water onto the sand, creating a slick, dark path to ease the friction. Great, thick ropes of papyrus are tied to the front of the sledge, and Ka's team, along with others, takes their position. A foreman, standing atop the block of stone itself, claps his hands to create a rhythm. It is a slow, steady, powerful beat, and then he begins to chant, his voice deep and resonant, a simple work song that every man there knows by heart. It is not a song of joy, it is a song of pure function, a song to synchronize the muscles of 200 men into a single, unified force. Heave, 200 backs strain in unison. The ropes pull taut, groaning under the immense tension, and pull, the great sledge groans. It resists, and then, slowly, inch by painful inch, it begins to slide forward. This is the sound of a pyramid being built. Not a sound of whips and chains, but the sound of calloused hands on rough rope, of bare feet digging into sand, of the rhythmic chanting of free men, and the slow, grinding groan of stone moving across the earth. It is the sound of human will, organized and focused, accomplishing the impossible. One slow, agonizing, magnificent step at a time. But as the sun climbs higher, a new enemy joins the struggle. The gentle warmth of dawn is gone, replaced by a fierce, white heat that bleaches the color from the sky. The sun is a hammer of brass, beating down on the backs of the workers. For Ka, the world shrinks to a few simple, powerful sensations. The burning weight of the sun on his shoulders, the scorching heat of the sand on the soles of his bare feet, the fine limestone dust that coats his tongue and throat, making it feel as dry as the desert itself. Sweat pours down his face, stinging his eyes. He can feel it running in rivers. Down his back, a single drop falls from his brow, and he watches it hit the sand, where it sizzles and vanishes in an instant. A tiny sacrifice to the thirsty god of the desert. In this world, under this sun, strength is not enough. You must have endurance, and that endurance, it must be fed, it must be watered. The men's energy is draining away with every drop of sweat that falls to the sand. Their bodies are beginning to cry out for relief. And then it comes. A sound that cuts through the groaning of ropes and the scraping of stone. It is not a human voice. It is deeper, more resonant. It is the long, low, powerful call of a horn, blown by a foreman standing high on a limestone block. That single note echoes across the Giza Plateau, and it is the most beautiful sound in the world. Instantly, the work stops. The great chanting of the hauling gangs ceases, mid-word. The ropes go slack. The thousands of straining bodies relax, slumping over in relief. A new kind of silence falls. Over the work site, a silence filled not with tension, but with anticipation. A silence made of the sound of 10,000 men catching their breath at once. The foreman's horn is not a call to work. It is a promise of relief. It is the sound that means the ration is ready. The bread is waiting, and the beer is cold. With the foreman's call still echoing in the air, a great, slow movement begins. From all across the construction site, the teams of men stop their work. They let the great ropes fall from their calloused hands. They turn their backs on the massive stones, and as one, they begin to move. It is a slow, shuffling procession. A great river of tired, dusty, sun-baked humanity flowing down the causeway towards the distribution tents. There is not much talk. The men conserve their energy. The only sound is the soft, rhythmic whisper of 10,000 bare feet on the sand. This is the other great machine of Giza, not the machine of ropes and levers that moves stone, but the machine of logistics that moves men. An army of scribes waits with their clay tablets, ready to mark down the rations. Overseers stand by great pottery jars, filled to the brim with the thick, nourishing beer. It is a system of incredible efficiency, designed to fuel the creation of an eternal monument. Our worker Car is a small part of this river. He shuffles along with the others, his eyes fixed on the tents ahead. He can begin to smell it now, a faint, sweet and sour smell of fermentation that cuts through the dust. It is the smell of relief, the smell of life. He sees the men ahead, of him receiving their portion, a loaf of dense barley bread, and a simple clay jar, cool to the touch. And his own thirst, his own deep fatigue, seems to grow even sharper with anticipation. Finally, it is his turn. Ka steps forward. The overseer, without a word, hands him his portion, a loaf of dark, dense barley bread, and a small, unglazed clay jar, heavy with liquid dot. In a world of scorching heat, the jar is impossibly, miraculously cool. He takes it, and the feeling of the cool, slightly damp earthenware against his hot, dusty, calloused palms is a shock of pure relief. It is a small island of cool in a vast ocean of heat. He cradles it in his hands for a moment, just feeling the sensation. He watches as tiny beads of condensation begin to form on the reddish-brown clay, a testament to the cool liquid held within. This is the simple magic of the earth. The porous clay allows a tiny amount of moisture to seep through and evaporate. A slow, constant process that keeps the contents cool, even under the punishing Egyptian sun. For Ka, this humble clay jar is not just a container, it is a piece of life-saving technology. It holds coolness, it holds hydration, it holds the strength he will need to face the rest of the long, hard day. In this moment, it is more precious to him than any piece of gold from the pharaoh's tomb. He finds a small patch of shade at the base of a half-finished wall, clutching his bread and his cool, heavy jar of life. The wait is over. He does not wait. Sitting in the sliver of shade, Ka brings the rough, clay lip of the jar to his mouth. He closes his eyes and tilts his head back. The first mouthful is a shock of life. It is not like the beer we know today. It is thick, almost like a thin, cool porridge. It is unfiltered, and he can feel the tiny, soft particles of barley and bread within it. The taste is not bitter with hops, but earthy and slightly sweet from the fermented grain, with a sharp, sour tang that cuts through the dust in his throat. But more than the taste, it is the coolness. The glorious, life-giving coolness. It washes down his parched throat, a blessed river in a private desert. He drinks deeply, not stopping for breath, letting the thick, beige liquid run down his chin and onto his dusty chest. It is the most wonderful feeling in the world. He drains the jar, and then he eats his loaf of bread, dipping it into the last dregs of the beer at the bottom of the jar, And slowly, a new feeling begins to spread through his exhausted body. It is not just the quenching of a thirst. It is a deeper thing. It is the feeling of fuel entering an empty engine. A warmth begins to radiate from his stomach, pushing back against the deep ache in his muscles. The trembling in his hands begins to subside. The world, which had seemed a harsh, shimmering haze of heat and pain, comes back into focus. The beer was not a luxury. It was his wage, yes, but it was also his medicine. It was his food. It was the liquid strength that would allow his body to perform the impossible task asked of it for one more afternoon. He was a builder of pyramids, and this was the mortar for his own soul. The empty jar is placed gently on the sand. The last crumbs of bread are gone. For a few precious moments, Ka sits in the shade, letting the strength seep back into his limbs. The deep ache in his muscles has not vanished, but it has retreated, becoming a dull, manageable hum instead of a sharp, screaming pain. The world feels solid again. He looks at his hands. They are still the rough, scarred hands of a laborer, but the trembling has stopped. He clenches them into fists, feeling the power slowly return. He takes one last, deep breath and stands. He looks over at his teammates, who are also standing, their brief respite over. There is a shared nod. No words are needed. They are all bound by the same weariness, and revived by the same simple gift. Ka walks back to the great stone block, its surface now hot to the touch. He places his palms flat against it. It is still a mountain. It is still an impossible weight. But it is no longer his enemy. It is simply his work. The foreman's chant begins again. Ka leans forward, joining his strength with that of the men beside him, and the great stone, it begins to move. The morning's labor will continue, fueled by the morning's beer. The morning's work continues, but the energy from the morning's beer begins to fade. And as it fades, the sun climbs to its zenith, a white, merciless eye in a bleached-out sky. The cool of the morning is now a distant, almost forgotten memory. This is the true heat of the day. The air itself seems to shimmer above the scorching stones. There are no shadows to offer refuge. The limestone blocks are now too hot to touch for more than a moment. The world has become a furnace, and the men are working in its very heart. For Ka, the world becomes a painful blur. The rhythmic chant of his foreman is a distant drone. The weight of the stone is a dull, constant agony. His body is a machine that is running out of fuel. The thirst from the morning has returned, but it is deeper now, a raw, scratching fire in his throat. This is the most dangerous part of the day. A moment of carelessness, a foot that slips, a mind that wanders for a single second, and a man can be lost. All around him, he sees the same struggle reflected in the faces of his teammates. They move like men walking in a dream, their bodies, continuing the work long after their spirits have begun to retreat. They are all waiting, listening, not for the chant of the foreman, but for a different sound, the sound that will mark the middle of their day, the moment of their greatest relief. They are waiting for the promise of the midday ration, the main meal of the day, the liquid bread that will give them the strength to survive the afternoon. Just as the heat becomes truly unbearable, the foreman's horn sounds again. This time, the note is longer, signaling the main break of the day. The great machine of labor groans to a complete halt. There is no slow shuffle this time. The men simply drop where they are, collapsing into whatever small patch of shade they can find, their bodies limp with exhaustion. For a full hour, the work will cease. For a full hour they are granted a reprieve from the tyranny of the sun. And the stone, the overseers move among them, distributing the midday ration. It is larger than the morning's portion, a thick, heavy loaf of bread, perhaps a few pungent onions, and a larger jar of the cool, life-giving beer. This is not a snack. This is the meal that will fuel the rest of their day. Ka finds his spot, his back against the cool, shaded side of a massive limestone block. He holds the heavy clay jar in both hands. Before he drinks, he tilts it slightly, letting a single drop fall onto the hot sand, a small, silent offering of thanks to the earth and to the god Osiris who makes the barley grow. Then he drinks. He drinks slowly this time, savoring it. The thick, sour-sweet liquid is not just a drink, it is food. It fills his empty stomach. It cools the fire in his throat. He closes his eyes, a look of pure, simple contentment on his dusty face. He can feel the strength, the life, seeping back into his weary muscles. The world, which had been a harsh, blinding glare, softens at the edges. This is peace. This is life. This is the simple, profound joy of a working man's rest. That feeling of life returning to Ka's limbs. It was not just in his mind. It was biochemistry, a quiet miracle happening inside his body. The drink that we call beer was for the ancient Egyptians, something entirely different from what we know today. It was not a clear, golden, bubbly liquid. It was a thick, unfiltered, nutritious soup. It was quite literally liquid bread. The process of making it, starting with half-baked barley bread, meant that much of the grain's goodness was preserved. It was packed with carbohydrates, the raw fuel needed for the hard labor of moving stone. But the true magic came from the fermentation. The wild yeast that turned the sugary mixture into beer was a tiny, living factory. And as it worked, it produced enormous amounts of B vitamins. We know today that these vitamins are essential for converting food into energy, for nerve function, and for maintaining one's spirit. The Egyptians did not know the names of these vitamins, of course, but they knew the result. They knew that workers sustained by beer were healthier, stronger, and had more stamina than those who drank water alone, and who were the masters of this life-giving craft. For most of Egyptian history, the brewers were not men in great factories. They were women in their own homes. Brewing beer was a domestic art, closely linked with baking bread. It was the mistress of the house who knew the family recipes, who understood the subtle signs of a good fermentation, who controlled the production of this vital part of the household's wealth and nutrition. While great state-run breweries, like the one at Abydos, certainly existed to supply massive projects like the pyramids, the foundational knowledge, the daily craft, that was the domain of women. The beer that Ka drank, the beer that fueled an empire, was born from a wisdom passed down from mother to daughter for 1,000 years. It was food, it was medicine, and it was a woman's art. But even that was not all it was. For the Egyptians, it was also divine. That beer in Ka's hand was more than just a drink. It was a story. It was a prayer. To understand its true importance, we must understand the god from whom it was believed to have come. His name was Osiris, the green-skinned god of the underworld, of agriculture, and of rebirth. It was Osiris who died and was brought back to life, and in his story, the Egyptians saw the great repeating cycle of their own world, the Nile floods, the fertile black earth emerges, the grain grows, is harvested, and then is reborn as life-giving bread and beer. The ancient stories told that Osiris himself had taught humanity the art of cultivating barley. But he didn't just give them grain. He gave them the sacred knowledge of fermentation. He taught them how to take this simple food and, with water and time, transform it into a divine drink. A drink that could gladden the heart, strengthen the weary body, and bring a mortal, just for a moment, a little closer to the world of the gods. So for Ka, every sip was a small act of communion. He was not just drinking a fermented grain slurry. He was partaking in a divine gift. The life force of the God of life was flowing into him, renewing his strength, making the impossible work of building a mountain of stones seem possible again. This belief was the true genius of the system. It connected the most backbreaking earthly labor with the highest, most sacred purpose. The workers were not just building a tomb for their king. They were participating in the cosmic order, fueled by a drink that was a direct gift from the gods. Their daily ration was a daily blessing, a reminder that the gods saw their toil and provided the strength to endure it. But in the rich and complex world of Egyptian mythology, every force of creation had its shadow. If beer was the gentle, life-giving gift of Osiris, it was also the clever trick that saved humanity from a goddess of pure, destructive rage. Her name was Sekhmet, the lioness-headed one. She was the Eye of Ra, the physical manifestation of the sun's fierce, scorching, and vengeful power. When the sun god Ra grew angry with the noise and disrespect of humankind, he sent Sekhmet to punish them. She descended upon the world not as a gentle goddess, but as a bloodthirsty lioness. She tore through villages, her rage growing with every life she took. She developed a taste for human blood, and her rampage became an unstoppable slaughter. Humanity was on the brink of being wiped from the face of the earth. Seeing the devastation, Ra felt a great pity. He wanted to stop her, but her bloodlust was now too great, so he devised a plan. He ordered the brewing of thousands of jars of beer. Then he had the beer dyed a deep, dark red with ochre and pomegranate juice, until it looked exactly like a great pool of blood. This lake of red beer was poured out across the fields where Sekhmet was expected to continue her massacre. She arrived, thirsty for more killing, and saw the vast red lake. Believing it to be the blood of her victims, she stooped to drink. And she drank, and drank, and drank. The strong beer flowed into her, and her divine rage was slowly soothed. Her fury was replaced by a warm, heavy drowsiness. Soon, the great, terrible lioness goddess fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. When she awoke, her bloodlust was gone. She had been transformed back into her gentler form. The loving goddess Hathor and humanity was saved. So for Ka and for every Egyptian, beer was not just sustenance. It was salvation in a cup, a sacred liquid that could pacify the most violent rage and restore peace to the world. The horn sounds again. The hour of rest is over, but the men who rise to their feet now are not the same men who collapsed into the shade an hour ago. The transformation is remarkable. The deep, dragging weariness in their movements is gone. Their shoulders are straighter. Their steps are sure. A quiet resolve has settled back into their eyes. Ka and his team walk back to their great stone sledge. There is a quiet camaraderie as they take their places along the thick papyrus ropes. A shared look, a determined nod. The foreman, once again, takes his position and begins his rhythmic chant. But this time, the response is different. It is not the strained groan of the morning. It is a full-throated roar, a chorus of renewed strength from 200 men. Heave and pull. The great sledge, which had seemed an immovable mountain, now groans and shudders, and begins to slide forward across the sand with a new, more powerful momentum. This is the miracle of the liquid bread. The calories, the vitamins, the life-giving water, and the gentle spirit of the alcohol have all done their work. They have rekindled the fire in the muscles and calmed the anxieties of the mind. And perhaps the stories of the gods have done their work too. The men are not just fueled by grain, they are fueled by faith. They are renewed by the belief that they are partaking in a divine gift, that the strength of Osiris himself is flowing through their veins. This is the rhythm that built the pyramids. Toil and rest, exhaustion and renewal. A cycle repeated every day for decades, powered by the simple, sacred, life-sustaining magic of beer. Asterisk, asterisk, this daily miracle of renewal, repeated for thousands of workers, was only possible because of another, even larger miracle of engineering and organization. It required more than just a few women brewing in their homes. It required a river of beer. For a long time, how they produced such a vast quantity was a mystery. And then, not long ago, in the ancient, sacred city of Abydos, archaeologists unearthed the answer. It was not a new tomb or a hidden temple. It was a brewery, but it was unlike any brewery ever found before. This was a factory, a massive, industrial-scale facility, more than 5,000 years old. It consisted of great production halls, with rows of huge ceramic vats, each capable of holding hundreds of liters. Heated from below, archaeologists estimate that at full capacity, this single brewery could produce 22,400 liters of beer in a single batch. Let that number sink in for a moment. 22,000 liters. Enough to provide every single worker at the Giza Plateau with their generous daily ration. This was not a simple craft. This was mass production on a scale that is difficult to comprehend for the ancient world. It speaks to an incredible level of state planning, of logistical genius. To build a pyramid, you first had to build a system capable of collecting and processing mountains of grain, and then distributing its life-giving product to an army of laborers. The brewery at Abydos is a monument in its own right. A monument not of stone, but of clay and fire, a testament to the quiet, administrative genius that was the true, forgotten foundation of the pharaoh's power. Asterisk, asterisk, that great factory at Abydos, with its rows of clay vats, was a marvel of human organization. But the most important workers in this factory were not human at all. They were invisible, they were countless, and they worked in silence. We are talking about yeast. The ancient Egyptians did not know of microorganisms. They did not understand the science of fermentation. To them, the process was a form of gentle, reliable magic. It was a divine mystery that they had learned to guide, but not to fully comprehend. Imagine Nehesi, or a brewer like him, looking over a great vat filled with the warm, sweet slurry of barley bread and Nile water. He has done his part. He has mixed the ingredients. Now he simply waits. He waits for the gods to breathe life into his creation, and then it begins. At first, it is nothing, just a still, cloudy liquid. But then, a single, tiny bubble rises from the depths, travels slowly to the surface, and pops with an almost inaudible sigh. Then another follows, and another. Soon, the entire surface of the vat is gently fizzing, whispering. A faint, sweet, alcoholic aroma begins to rise, mingling with the scent of baked bread. The invisible workers have awoken. The yeast, present in the air, on the grain, and in the very pores of the clay pots, has begun its feast. It consumes the sugars from the barley, and in return, it gifts the mixture with two things: the spirit of alcohol and the breath of life. In those tiny, rising bubbles, they saw it as a blessing from Osiris. We see it as biochemistry. But whether you call it magic or science, the result was the same. A simple mixture of bread and water was being transformed by an unseen army into the thick, nourishing, life-giving beer that would build an empire. Asterisk, asterisk, this magical, life-giving process was not left to chance. It was carefully watched over, guided by the steady, experienced hands of the master brewers. In ancient Egypt, the brewer, or fati, was not just a laborer. He or she was a highly respected artisan, a master of a vital and almost sacred craft. Their skill was as essential to the kingdom as that of the stonemason or the scribe. They were the keepers of the yeast, the guardians of the fermentation, the alchemists who turned simple grain into the liquid gold that fueled the nation. Let's return to our brewer, Nehesi. He stands over one of the great bubbling vats, his face a mask of quiet concentration. He dips a long wooden ladle deep into the fermenting mixture. He lifts it, not to drink, but to observe. He looks at the color, the thickness of the liquid. He smells it, his experienced nose detecting the subtle shift in aroma as the sugars are converted to alcohol. He is reading the story of the brew, a story told in scent and texture. Then he takes a small taste. On his tongue, he can discern the entire process. He knows if the fermentation is too fast or too slow. He knows, with a wisdom passed down through generations, exactly when the beer will be ready, when it will have reached that perfect balance of sweetness and strength, of nourishment and spirit. This is a science of the senses, a knowledge held not in books, but in the hands and the palate of the master craftsman. His work ensures that the beer that goes to the workers is nutritious and safe, and the beer that goes to the temples is worthy of the gods. It is a position of immense responsibility and of quiet, immense power. Asterisk, asterisk, the brew is nearly ready. The magic of the yeast has almost run its course. And now another army of workers stands ready to do its part. They are not made of flesh and blood. They are made of clay. Let us see the world through the eyes of one of these humble objects. I am a beer jar. I am simple. I am one of thousands, lined up in the cool, dark storeroom next to the brewery. My body was shaped from the rich mud of the Nile, my form given by the patient hands of a potter, my strength forged in the fire of a kill dot. My purpose is to hold, to contain, to be filled. For days I have waited here in the quiet darkness, with my countless brothers and sisters. We are an army of empty vessels. We listen to the distant sounds of the brewery, the murmur of the workers, the crackle of the fires, and we wait for the moment our purpose will be fulfilled. We wait for the beer. We wait for the liquid bread that will give strength to the pyramid builders. We wait for the sacred libation that will be poured out as an offering to the great god Osir. Is, our emptiness is not a void. It is a potential. It is a promise. We are the final, essential step in the long journey from the barley field to the thirsty lips of a man, or a god, and now, the time is coming. The great stone door of the storeroom opens, and light floods in. The brewers are coming. The beer is ready. My long, quiet wait is almost over. Asterisk, asterisk, the cool, dark air of the storeroom is now filled with purposeful activity. The master brewer has Given his approval, the buyer is ready. The process of transferring it from the great vats to the waiting jars begins. It is a slow, careful, and practiced rhythm. Workers use large scoops to ladle the thick, fermented liquid from the vats, but it does not go directly into the jars. First, it is poured through great fine-mached linen cloths, stretched over a wooden frame. This is the straining, the separation. The largest pieces of the barley bread, the thickest sediment, are caught in the cloth, leaving a smoother, purer liquid to flow through. And what a liquid it is! It is not clear, but thick and opaque, the color of desert honey, of beaten gold, of the harvest itself. It is a golden river, flowing from the great vats, through the white linen, and into the mouths of the waiting jars. The sound fills the storeroom, a gentle, splashing, gurgling sound, a sound of fulfillment, of emptiness, being filled. Jar after jar is brought forward, filled with the precious liquid, and then sealed with a simple clay stopper and perhaps a daub of Nile mud. The air becomes thick with the aroma, the sharp, sour temps of fermentation, the sweet smell of malted barley, the earthy scent of damp clay. It is the smell of life, of nourishment, of wealth, for Ka. Waiting on the hot sands of the Giza Plateau, the beer is a personal salvation. But here, in the brewery, we see it for what it truly is, a massive, organized, industrial process. It is the lifeblood of the entire project, the currency that pays for the construction of eternity. And this golden river, now being captured, in thousands of identical clay jars, is the fuel that will keep the great machine of Giza running for another day. The last jar is filled. The great vats are nearly empty. But before this river of liquid gold can be sent out into the world, one final, crucial ritual must be performed. The master brewer must give his verdict. Nehesi steps forward. An assistant brings him a small, clean-tasting cup. Another unseals one of the freshly filled jars and pours a small amount of the finished beer. A hush falls over the brewery. All work stops. All eyes are on Nehesi. He does not drink. First, he holds the cup to the light, observing the color, a rich, cloudy amber. He swirls it gently, watching the way the thick liquid coats the side of the cup. Then he brings it to his nose and inhales deeply, his eyes closing for a moment. He is not just smelling beer, he is reading a language of aroma. He can discern the sweetness of the barley bread, the faint, fruity notes from the yeast, the sharp, clean tang of a successful fermentation. He is searching for any flaw, any sour note that would speak of a spoiled batch. Finally, he takes a small, deliberate sip. He lets it rest on his tongue, his expression unreadable. The entire brewery holds its breath. A week's worth of labor, the sustenance for thousands of men, the offering for the gods. It all comes down to this single moment of judgment. After a long, silent pause, Nehesi swallows. A slow, almost imperceptible nod. That is all. It is enough. A quiet murmur of relief ripples through the workers. The batch is good. The master has given his approval. The beer is worthy. Now its journey can truly begin. Asterisk, asterisk, the master's approval is given, and the great machinery of distribution begins to turn. The thousands of sealed clay jars, each one a small promise of strength and relief, are carefully loaded onto broad, shallow-bottomed barges waiting in the canals. Connected to the Nile, the journey begins. The barges move out onto the great river, the sacred highway of Egypt. They are low in the water, heavy with their precious cargo. they join a timeless procession of other boats. Boats carrying grain from the fertile delta, boats carrying cattle from the southern pastures, and great heavy barges carrying the massive granite blocks that will one day form the inner chambers of the pyramid itself. The sun beats down, but the beer, protected inside its cool clay wombs, sleeps as it travels. It drifts past green fields of papyrus reeds, past small fishing villages where children wave from the riverbank, past the grand temples of the gods. This journey is a testament to the organizational genius of the Egyptian state, the ability to connect the farmer in the field to the brewer at the vat, to the boatman on the river, and finally to the laborer on the Giza plateau. This was the true power of the pharaoh. It was a logistical web that held the entire kingdom together, and for the men toiling under the midday sun at Giza, the sight of these beer barges arriving at the bustling port was as welcome as the great inundation, the yearly flood of the Nile that brought life to all of Egypt. It was a sign that their payment, their fuel, their reward had arrived. The midday sun hangs directly overhead, a merciless ball of fire. But for Ka and his team, there is a moment of peace. They sit together in the long, cool shadow cast by a colossal block of granite, their backs against the stone. The overseers have distributed the main meal, and the meal is simple: a heavy loaf of barley bread and a large jar of beer. For them, these are not two separate things. They are two forms of the same thing. They are grain, one solid, one liquid. 4. The ancient Egyptians' beer was not a luxury, not a recreational drink for the end of the day. It was food. It was a thick, nutritious, life-sustaining porridge that you could drink. In the intense heat of the desert, where a dry mouth and a tired body might struggle to get down a loaf of coarse bread, the liquid bread was a far more efficient way to deliver calories and hydration. This was the genius of their system of rations. The workers on the Great Pyramids received beer 3 times a day, not as a treat, but as a fundamental part of their diet. It was their fuel, their payment, and their right as builders of the pharaoh's eternal home. Ka tears off a piece of bread and dips it into his jar of beer, a common way of eating. He and his teammates eat in a comfortable silence, the only sound the soft chewing and the occasional deep sigh of satisfaction. This shared ritual, this quiet moment of replenishment, is what binds them together. They are not just a work crew. They are brothers of the rope and the stone, sharing the same bread, the same beer, and the same monumental task. As the nourishment of the bread and beer settles in, something else begins to stir among the workers. A quiet camaraderie. The deep silence of exhaustion gives way to a low murmur of conversation. The men, their immediate needs met, begin to talk. They do not speak of gods or pharaohs. They speak of small, human things. A man complains good-naturedly about his aching back. Another shares a story about his young son who is learning to fish. They share a quiet joke about their stern-faced foreman. Ka turns to the man sitting beside him, a friend he has hauled ropes with for 5 seasons. They say nothing, but they share a look of mutual understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the shared hardship and the shared relief. Before taking another drink, they gently touch the rims of their rough clay jars together. A simple clink of earthenware. It is a gesture of solidarity, a toast to their survival. This was perhaps the most important function of the daily beer ration. It was more than just fuel for the muscles. It was fuel for the spirit of the community. The shared ritual of the midday break transformed thousands of individual laborers into a brotherhood. The mild, calming effect of the beer eased the tensions of the hard work, softened the edges of their difficult lives, and opened the door for conversation and friendship. The overseers of the great project understood this. They knew that to build a mountain of stone, you needed more than strong backs. You needed a strong team. You needed morale. You needed men who would work for each other, not just for their rations. The beer was the social glue that held this great human machine together. Asterisk, asterisk, the sound of the horn echoes once more across the plateau. The midday break is over. The men rise, their bodies refueled, their spirits lifted by the brief moment of camaraderie. They return to the ropes and the stones. But the afternoon sun is a fiercer beast than the mornings. The work becomes more dangerous. The mind, weary from hours of repetitive labor, begins to wander. Let's put you there for a moment, on that rope line, standing beside car. The heat is a physical weight. The foreman is shouting commands. The 2-ton block of stone in front of you must be moved into a precise position on the ramp. A slip of your foot, a moment of lapsed concentration from the man beside you, and a leg could be crushed. A life could be ended. Your mind drifts. You think of the cool water of the Nile, of your children playing in the village, of anything but this rope, this stone, this sun dot, and here you have a choice. A choice that every man on this line must make, every hour of every day. Do you give in to the temptation of the daydream, allowing your mind to escape this grueling reality, but risking a fatal mistake? Or do you pull your focus back from the edges, narrowing your entire world down to this single moment? This rope in your hand, the rhythm of the chant, the back of the man in front of you, Car, and the thousands of men like him make their choice. They choose focus. They choose the discipline of the present moment. Their eyes, which were soft with contentment just moments ago, are now sharp. Their world shrinks. It becomes nothing but the task at hand. This focus, this shared mental fortitude, this too is a part of the secret fuel that built the pyramids. It is a discipline sharpened by necessity and refreshed 3 times a day by the gift of beer. Asterisk. As the small campfires die down, the men begin to drift away, walking in the cool darkness towards their homes. And their home is not a rough, temporary camp. It is another marvel of Egyptian planning, a permanent, purpose-built city for the workers and their families, nestled right at the foot of the Great Plateau. We often imagine the pyramid builders as slaves, sleeping in the sand under the lash of a whip. But the stones and the records tell a different story. This was a city of skilled craftsmen, of masons, of engineers, free men who were paid for their labor in bread and beer, and the state that employed them also housed them. Let's imagine walking through the streets of this village. The streets are laid out in a neat, orderly grid. The houses are uniform, built of mud brick, sharing common walls, each with a small open doorway. A warm yellow light glows from within each home, the light of a small cooking fire or a simple oil lamp. The air smells of wood smoke, of baking, bread for the morning, of life. You can hear the low murmur of a family's conversation, the soft cry of a baby being soothed to sleep. This was a real community. It had its own bakeries, its own scribes, even its own doctors. It was a place where children were born and raised, where families lived out their lives in the great, enduring shadow of the monument their fathers were building. This village is perhaps as great a testament to the power of the pharaoh as the pyramid itself. It shows an understanding that to build something eternal, you must first care for the mortal men who lay the stones. You must give them a home to return to, a family to work for, and a community to belong to. Kaa walks down a familiar, narrow street and stops before a simple wooden door. He is no longer just a worker. He is home. Asterisk, asterisk, he steps inside his small mud brick home. The air is warm and smells of hearth smoke and his family. His wife greets him with a quiet smile. His children are already asleep on their reed mats in the corner. This is his sanctuary. He is exhausted, his body aching for rest. But before he sits down for his own meal, before he finishes the last of his daily beer, there is one final duty. To perform in a small niche, carved into the wall, is the household shrine. Here stand a few small, simple figures carved from wood or clay. Taurit, the hippopotamus goddess who protects mothers and children. Base, the dwarf god who wards off evil spirits. And at the center, a small figure of Osiris, the great god of life and rebirth. Kaa takes a small, clean offering bowl, and from his own personal jar of beer, his wage, his food, his strength, he carefully pours a small amount into the bowl. It is a simple, quiet gesture, a private act seen by no one but his wife and his gods. But it is an act of profound significance. This is his way of giving thanks. Thanks for surviving another dangerous day. Thanks for the food and drink that sustains him. And thanks to the gods for maintaining the great order of the world, for making the sun rise and the Nile flood. He is sharing his portion with his divine family, just as he shares it with his earthly one. He places the small bowl before the statue of Osiris. It is a humble offering, but in this small house, in the quiet heart of the workers' village, it is an act of faith as powerful and as meaningful as any grand ceremony in the temples of the pharaohs. Asterisk, asterisk, that small bowl of beer, offered in the quiet of a simple home, was a prayer to a god who was at the very heart of the Egyptian soul. To understand the beer, you must understand Osiris. The stories say that in the beginning, in a golden age, Osiris was a great and benevolent king of Egypt. He was the one who taught humanity how to leave their savage ways, how to cultivate the land, how to live by laws, and how to worship the gods. He was the source of all civilization, but his brother, Set, the god of the desert, of chaos and storms, grew jealous of his beloved sibling, and so Set devised a treacherous plan. He built a magnificent chest, perfectly tailored to Osiris' measurements, and at a great feast, he promised to gift it to any guest who could fit inside it perfectly. When Osiris lay down in the chest, Set slammed the lid shut, sealed it with lead, and cast it into the Nile. Osiris's devoted wife, the great goddess Isis, was overcome with grief. She searched the length and breadth of Egypt for her husband's body, finally finding the chest and bringing it home. But the vengeful Set found it again, and this time he dismembered his brother's body into 14 pieces, scattering them all across the land of Egypt. Yet Isis's love was stronger than Set's hatred. Patiently, she journeyed to every corner of the kingdom, gathering the pieces of her beloved. And with her powerful magic, she reassembled him, wrapping him in linen, creating the first mummy. She brought him back to life, having passed through death. Osiris could no longer rule in the land of the living. He became the eternal king of the afterlife, the just judge of the dead, and his story became the story of Egypt itself, for the Egyptians saw the story of Osiris in the world around them every year. The grain was Osiris, cut down by the harvest, threshed and broken like his body, and then, when planted in the earth and watered by the Nile, it was reborn. Beer was the liquid form of this resurrection. To drink it was to partake in the very essence of the God who had conquered death. Asterisk, asterisk, the small offering Kaa made in the quiet of his own home was a personal prayer, a quiet echo of a much grander ritual that took place every single day in the great temples all across Egypt. Let's step now from Kaa's humble mud brick house into the cool, towering stone halls of a temple dedicated to Osiris. The air here is different. It is heavy with the scent of incense and a profound, sacred silence that seems to absorb all sound. Great pillars, carved with the stories of the gods, reach up into the darkness. Here, a priest, his head shaven, his body wrapped in pure white linen, moves with a slow, deliberate grace. He is not a brewer, he is a servant of the god. But the object in his hands is the same. It is a jar of beer. This jar, however, is beautifully made, perhaps painted with sacred symbols, and the beer within it is the finest from the temple's own brewery, a brew worthy of a god. He approaches the great stone altar that stands before the towering statue of Osiris. He recites a hymn, his voice a low, chanting murmur in the vast, silent hall. And then he carefully, reverently pours the beer into offering bowls placed before the god. This was the daily meal of the gods. Just as the workers needed beer to sustain their physical bodies, the Egyptians believed the gods needed offerings of food and drink to maintain their power, and to uphold Mat, the great cosmic order of the universe. Beer was not just a gift from the gods, it was a gift to the gods. It was a bridge between the world of mortals and the world of the divine, a sacred liquid that nourished every level of Egyptian existence, from the lowest laborer to the highest deity. The beer nourished the living and it sustained the gods. But for the Egyptians, its journey did not end at the temple altar, or with the last sip of a tired worker. It had one final, vital role to play, as sustenance for the most important journey of all, the journey into the afterlife. Death, for the Egyptians, was not an ending. It was a transition. The soul, the Kot, would leave the body and undertake a long and often perilous journey through the underworld, the Duat, before hopefully reaching the eternal paradise of the Field of Reeds. And like any long journey, this one required provisions. Step inside the silent painted walls of a nobleman's tomb. Here on the walls, in vibrant color, is the world he wished to enjoy for all eternity. We see him hunting in the marshes, overseeing his estates, and feasting with his family. And on every wall we see the offering table, a table piled high with all the good things of life, magically preserved for his soul. There are loaves of bread, cuts of meat, figs and dates. And always, standing tall and elegant, are the jars of beer. These were not just pictures, they were magical promises. The hieroglyphic spells carved beside them would ensure that the deceased would have, for all eternity, 1,000 loaves of bread and 1,000 jars of beer. From the mightiest pharaoh in his golden sarcophagus to a humble worker like Kaa, buried in the simple sand-swept cemetery of his village, the belief was the same. The comforts you enjoyed in this life were the ones you would need in the next, and no comfort was more essential, more fundamental to the Egyptian soul than a cool, nourishing drink of beer. It was the taste of life itself, a taste they intended to savor forever. Asterisk, asterisk, it was food for the living, an offering for the gods, and sustenance for the dead. But this remarkable liquid had yet another role to play in the lives of the Egyptians. It was also their medicine in the great medical texts. Like the Ebers Papyrus, we find hundreds of prescriptions for all manner of ailments, and a great many of them have a common ingredient: beer. The ancient physicians understood that beer was a perfect vehicle for delivering other remedies. The alcohol could help extract the beneficial compounds from herbs and plants. Its thick, sweetish taste could mask the bitterness of many medicines, making them easier for a sick person to swallow. And the nourishing, slightly calming properties of the beer itself were considered part of the healing process. Imagine a physician in a quiet room lit by a single oil lamp. A patient is suffering from a stomach ailment. The physician does not just hand him a pill. He consults his papyrus scroll. Then he takes a mortar and pestle and carefully grinds a mixture of herbs, perhaps coriander or mint. He mixes this powder into a cup of fresh beer, perhaps whispering a quiet incantation to the goddess Sekhmet, the bringer of both plague and protection, as he stirs. The patient then drinks this mixture. He is receiving not just a chemical compound, but a nourishing food, a calming spirit, and a sacred blessing, all in one. It was a truly holistic approach to medicine, one that understood that healing the body also meant soothing the spirit. In the world of the ancient Egyptians, the brewery and the pharmacy were often one and the same. Asterisk, asterisk, the night over the Giza Plateau is vast and silent. The air is cool. On Kaz's skin, his family is asleep inside their small home, and the last of the evening's beer has left a pleasant, gentle warmth in his belly. He sits on his doorstep, looking out into the darkness, and in the distance, bathed in the pale silver light of the moon, the Great Pyramid rises, a man-made mountain, a stairway to the stars, and in this quiet, peaceful moment, a thought comes to him, a thought as vast and as heavy as the monument. He is building my life is a fleeting thing. I am Ka, son of Anan. I was born, I work, and one day I will be laid to rest in the sand. My name will be forgotten. My hands, which are now so strong, will turn to dust. My life is a single season, a brief flood of the Nile, and then it is gone. But that great mountain of stone, it will stand for all time. It will watch the sun rise 1,000 times, 1,000 times after I am gone. It will see dynasties rise and fall. It will be a landmark for my children's children's children. It is as eternal as the stars themselves. And my hands, my small, mortal, aching hands, they have placed a stone in that eternal mountain. My sweat is in the mortar that binds its blocks. My strength, my life's energy, has been given to something that will outlast me and everyone I have ever known. He looks at the empty clay jar beside him and the beer. The beer is the bridge. It takes the life of the grain, a thing that also lives and dies, and transforms it into the strength in my arms. And my arms take that strength, and they build a house for eternity. It is a great circle, a great, holy turning of life into stone, of a mortal man's work into a god's immortality. In that moment, the aches in his back seem a little less important. The weariness feels like a noble sacrifice. He is not just a laborer. He is a part of something that will never die. Asterisk, asterisk, he picks up the empty clay jar from the ground beside him. It is light now, its life-giving contents gone. He runs a calloused thumb over its smooth, hard surface, and in that simple touch, there is a profound truth. His own hand, the hand of Ka, is also made of a kind of clay, the living clay of flesh and bone, a clay that is soft, that scars, that wrinkles, that grows tired, a clay that will, in a few short decades, grow weak and return to the dust from which it came. But the jar is different. It too was born of the soft mud of the Nile, but it has passed through the fire, and the fire has given it a different kind of life, a life that is hard and patient and incredibly long. This simple, humble jar will outlive him. It will outlive his children. It might even outlive the Great Pyramid itself, should the mountain of stone ever crumble. It will lie in the sand for 1,000 years, for 3,000 years, holding in its silent, empty form the memory of this night and the memory of the tired man who once drank from it. Asterisk, asterisk, and so the jar waits, and it holds its silence. The seasons turn. The river floods and recedes. Dynasties rise and fall. The language of Ka is forgotten. The names of his gods become strange glyphs on ruined temple walls. The Great Pyramid itself becomes a mystery, a silent wonder for new civilizations to gaze upon, and the simple clay jar, broken now, lies buried beneath a mountain of sand and time. Then, after 5,000 years of waiting, a new kind of hand finds it, a hand that is soft and careful, wielding not a stone tool, but a delicate brush, the hand of an archaeologist. The shard is lifted from the earth. It is just a piece of baked mud. It has no voice, but if you know how to listen, it whispers a story. It whispers of the potter's wheel that gave it form. It whispers of the fire that gave it strength. It whispers of the thick, sour beer it once held, a liquid cool against its porous walls. And, most importantly, it whispers of the man who drank from it. It tells the story of Ka's calloused hands, of his aching back, of his profound thirst, under a brutal sun. It speaks of his quiet moment of relief, of the simple, human joy he felt as he sat in the shadow of a monument he was building for a god. This is how the past speaks to us, not in great pronouncements, but in quiet whispers, through the humble, forgotten objects that ordinary people left behind. A broken pot can tell a truer story of a life than the grandest inscription on a king's tomb. Asterisk, asterisk, and 4K sitting on his doorstep. He is not thinking of archaeologists 5,000 years in the future. He is thinking only of the here and now, of the cool night air on his skin, of the profound, bone-deep satisfaction of a day of hard labor completed. The sun, which was a merciless enemy at noon, is now a gentle, departing friend. It sinks below the horizon of the great desert, painting the western sky in spectacular streaks of deep orange, of rose, and of a soft, bruised purple dot. In this last, magical light of day, the Great Pyramid is transformed. The pale limestone blocks, which were white and glaring just hours ago, now seem to glow with a warm, golden light of their own, as if the monument is absorbing the last of the sun's energy. It is no longer a construction site, a place of noise and toil. In the quiet of the evening, it becomes what it was always meant to be, a sacred mountain, a bridge between the earth and the stars, which are now beginning to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. The day is over. A profound sense of peace settles over the land. The work is done, the men are fed, and it is time to go home. Asterisk. Ka steps through the simple doorway of his home. He leaves the world of gods and monuments behind, and enters his own small world. A world of red mats, of a simple hearth, of the quiet breathing of his sleeping children. His wife gives him a piece of bread left over from her own meal and a cup of water. They do not need to speak of the hardness of the day. They have shared thousands of such days. Their shared silence is a language of its own. He walks over to the corner where his young son is asleep. He kneels down beside the mat, his large, powerful frame seeming out of place next to the small, fragile body of the child. He gently places his rough, calloused hand on the boy's back, feeling the steady, peaceful rhythm of his breathing. This is the other side of the equation. This is the reason for the toil. During the day, he is a builder for a god. His strength belongs to the pharaoh. His sweat builds a house for eternity. But here, in the quiet of his own home, in the gentle presence of his sleeping child, he is simply a father. And perhaps this is the true monument he is building. Not the great mountain of stone that will touch the sky, but this small, safe, warm space. A life for his family, sustained by his labor, paid for in bread and beer. The pyramid is his work, but this is his world. And for this world, he will rise tomorrow and face the sun again. Asterisk, asterisk, and so the great cycle continues. The next day, a new batch of beer arrives from the brewery. A portion of that very beer we saw being made, that river of liquid gold we saw flowing into thousands of jars, now finds its way into Kaz's tired hands at the midday break. He drinks, and the strength of the grain allows him to place another stone on the great monument. Another portion of that same batch, the finest and purest, is carried to the temple. There, a priest in white linen pours it as a sacred libation, an offering of thanks to the god Osiris, ensuring the cosmic order is maintained. Another portion finds its way to the bustling village market. A woman, perhaps Kaz's wife, trades a few jars of the beer ration for a string of fresh fish or a handful of dates. The beer is not just food, it is currency, the lifeblood of a small, local economy. And at home that night, she might mix a small amount of that same beer with honey to soothe her child's cough, using the drink as a gentle medicine, just as her mother taught her. It is a river with many streams. From a single great brewery, it flows out to nourish the worker, to honor the god, to facilitate trade, and to heal the sick. It is the substance that binds this entire world together, from the most sacred temple ritual to the most humble domestic. Comfort. It is more than a drink. It is civilization in a cup. Asterisk, asterisk, and so this cycle of work and rest, of bread and beer, continues. Day after day, year after year, decade after decade. The stones are laid, one by one, and the great mountain of the pyramid rises until it finally pierces the sky, and then the work is done. The city of the workers is slowly abandoned. The great brewery at Abydos falls silent. The pharaohs are laid to rest in their eternal homes, and the desert, with its slow, patient, sandy breath, begins to reclaim its own. 1,000 years pass. Then 2,000, then 3 and 4. The Egypt of Ka becomes a land of myth and legend. His language is a puzzle of strange pictures carved on stone. His gods are sleeping. His simple beer jar, now broken, lies buried deep beneath the sand, holding its long silence, until one day a new kind of hand arrives. A hand not calloused from hauling ropes, but soft and careful, holding a delicate brush. The hand of an archaeologist. With a gentle, patient motion, the brush sweeps away 5,000 years of dust, and a small, reddish-brown piece of pottery is revealed to the sun once more. Let's watch the image blur in our minds. The strong, sun-darkened hand of Ka, holding his full, cool jar of beer, fades, and in its place, a different hand appears, this one pale, perhaps wearing a white cotton glove, and the full jar of beer dissolves, until all that is left is this single, broken shard. It is no longer a simple drinking vessel. It is now an artifact, a clue, a message in a bottle, washed ashore on the beach of our modern time. Asterisk, asterisk, that single shard of pottery is cleaned, catalogued, and placed in a quiet, climate-controlled room in a great museum. It sits under a soft, focused light, protected behind a wall of glass. Let's look at it closely. It is no longer a perfect vessel. It is a fragment. Its edges are rough and broken. Its surface is covered in a fine web of tiny cracks, a map of the thousands of years it spent sleeping under the immense pressure of the earth. The rich, reddish-brown color of the Nile clay has faded, bleached by millennia of silent darkness. You can see the faint impression of the potter's fingers, a ghost of a touch from 5,000 years ago. It is imperfect, it is broken, and yet it is beautiful. Its beauty comes not from its perfection, but from its survival. Each crack, each stain, each faded patch of color tells a story. It speaks of the hot sun it was born under, of the fire that gave it strength, of the cool beer it once held, and of the tired, calloused hands that once cradled it, a perfect, modern. The replica of this jar would tell us nothing. It would be a silent, empty thing. But this broken piece, this scarred survivor, it whispers the truth of a life that was lived. We look at its imperfections, and we feel a profound connection to the man who once held it. It is a bridge across time, built from a simple piece of broken clay. Asterisk, asterisk, and that one small shard. It is just a single word in a vast, silent library. For every grand statue of a pharaoh, there are 1,000,000 broken beer jars. For every golden sarcophagus, there are 1,000,000 simple, clay offering bowls. For every great temple, there are 1,000,000 worn-down tools, frayed pieces of linen, and the simple, forgotten toys of children. These are the true witnesses of history. They do not speak of great battles or the reigns of kings. They whisper a different kind of story, a story that is quieter and perhaps more true. A clay jar whispers of thirst, and of the profound relief of a cool drink at the end of a hot day. A worn-out sandal whispers of long journeys on dusty roads. A small, carved wooden hippo whispers of a mother's prayer for the safety of her child. These humble objects are the collective memory of a people. They tell us not what it was like to be a god on earth, but what it was like to be a human being. A human who felt tired and hungry and thirsty. A human who loved their family, feared their gods, and found simple joy in a shared meal and a cup of beer. The grand monuments tell us of the ambitions of kings. But the broken pottery, it tells us of the lives of the people. And it is in their story, the story of the cause of the world, that we find the true, beating heart of this ancient civilization. Asterisk, asterisk, and in that small, broken piece of clay, we see the entire story, the entire philosophy of ancient Egypt, held in miniature. It is the story of a great, unbroken circle. The circle begins with the river, the great Nile, which floods its banks each year, leaving behind the rich, black silt, the very promise of life. From that silt, the barley grows, drinking in the water of the river and the light of the sun god, Ra. The grain holds the energy of the earth and the sky within its tiny form. That grain is then harvested by human hands, ground and baked into bread, and that bread, in the hands of a brewer, is transformed into beer, a sacred liquid that concentrates the life force of the grain, the beer. in turn gives its strength to the worker, to Ka. It turns the energy of the sun into the power of his muscles, and that power is used to lift the great stones, to build the pyramid, a man-made mountain, a stairway that connects the earthly kingdom to the eternal stars, the realm of the gods. And the pyramid stands for millennia, until an archaeologist finds a broken piece of a beer jar at its base, and the story begins all over again. The river, the grain, the beer, the man, the stone, the stars. It is all one great, beautiful, and endless cycle. A wheel that turns with the seasons, with the sun, and with the steady, patient rhythm of history itself. It is a story of transformation, of life becoming strength, and strength becoming something eternal, and we are all, in our own small way, a part of that turning. It is a beautiful, endless cycle, and like the river, like the sun, like the turning of the stars themselves, it has its own rhythm, a slow, steady, peaceful rhythm. Let us listen to that rhythm now. Let the image of the great pyramids fade from your mind. Let the sound of the workers' chants dissolve into the quiet. Let the story of Ka and his beer and his long day's labor, let it all drift away, back into the soft, sandy sleep of history. There is no more work to be done, no more stones to be moved. All the great sounds of that ancient world have fallen silent, and the only rhythm that remains now is the simple, gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Just feel it for a moment, in and out. A slow, steady, peaceful rhythm. A rhythm that asks nothing of you. A rhythm that is all your own. It is the oldest and most honest rhythm in the universe. Let it be your guide now as you begin to drift. Asterisk, asterisk, let the gentle rhythm of your breathing be your only guide now. Follow it as it leads you away from the shores of the waking world and into the deep, calm waters of rest. The stories are all told. The day is done. Let the thoughts of your own day begin to fade. Let the worries and the lists and the plans, let them all become soft, distant clouds. They are not needed here. There is nothing to do now, nowhere to be, only here, in this quiet, safe and comfortable space. Feel the stillness as it settles over you, like a soft, warm blanket. Feel it in your shoulders, letting them grow heavy and release all the burdens of the day. Feel it flow down your arms to the tips of your fingers. Feel the quiet in your legs, a pleasant, comfortable weight, letting them sink into the softness beneath you. There is only this moment, this peace, this deep, profound quiet, and the gentle, easy rhythm of your breath, carrying you slowly, gently, towards sleep. Asterisk, asterisk, your only work now is to breathe. Your only journey is into the soft, quiet land of your own dreams. Let everything else fade away. The stories of the past, the worries of the present. Just let them dissolve. There is only the darkness behind your eyes. A warm, peaceful, and gentle darkness. There is only the feeling of rest, deep and profound. Let the last of your thoughts drift away now, like little reed boats on a slow, dark river, floating out towards a calm and silent sea. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to see, only this quiet, this peace, this rest. Sleep now, sleep well. Good night.